We've reached the stage in this Property Developers Mastery series where we are getting ready to construct the main superstructure of the building. So for context, we are in the build it phase and we are in the frame stage. Within this, there are actually two areas that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the external frame and we're going to look at the internal frame. Incidentally, I was looking recently and noticed that people who watch this channel and watch these videos, only about 15% have actually subscribed. That means about 85% of the people who are watching and enjoying this channel have not actually subscribed. So please do me a favor, if you value this content and you want it to continue and to help me actually bring on some high level guests, then we need to bring up the subscriber base. Incidentally, towards the end of this video, I'll tell you how you can get a copy of my book, You a Property Developer. So within this phase, what we're actually looking at is the frame external, and the things that we're going to be covering here is simply what type of construction are you going to be putting up. So timber frame, the benefits of timber frame is that you erect it very, very quickly. You can be wind and watertight depending on the size of the building within 2 to 4 weeks. And what that means is that you can then start working in the internal part of the building after that period. The advantage of that, particularly in the UK as we have inclement weather, is that you can actually be progressing when the weather prevents you from working on the outside. You can be working on the inside of the building. However, the more traditional, particularly within England, although that is rapidly changing, is a block construction. So the block construction tends to be a bit slower, and what you're actually doing is you're constructing the walls in tandem, so the internal and the external walls are going up. So with the timber frame, you're going to have an external skin, which will be often be a block wall, but with the block construction, you're going to have an inner and outer block wall, and also you may also have the internal walls within the actual building may be also block, or that could be timber frame. So just depending on what you're doing there. It does take a bit longer. So between the two processes, timber frame tends to be requires a much higher upfront cost, particularly if you're buying a kit, because you're having to basically pay for the kit as or before it is delivered to the site, whereas block construction, you are able to order the materials as the building progresses. However, in terms of cost, there tends to not be that significant amount of difference. There tends to be a higher material cost with timber frame, but in terms of the labor cost, it tends to be less because you're achieving that in a much shorter time frame, whereas with block construction, tends to be cheaper materials, but then the labor tends to be a higher part of it. And so fundamentally, it doesn't make a huge impact in terms of what the costs are. As an overall build cost, it tends to be about less than 1%. It actually makes a difference. Obviously for that particular stage, it's a higher percentage, but it's about 15%, but actually the overall cost to the build itself is fairly insignificant. Once you've done that, then you're going to install the roof trusses. So this is part of creating your roof structure, and then once that's been completed, then you're going to apply whatever surface that you're going to have on that roof, whether it be tile or slate or any other particular type of render that you're going to use on the roof. All of this will require scaffolding, and again, depending on which method that you are using, the scaffolding may go up at a different time. So for instance, with timber frame, the scaffolding will often go up before the timber frame panels are put in place. Some companies like the scaffolding to be put up in a 3 U-shape, so a U-shape leaving one side open so that the panels can be brought in. Some like it to be completely put in place. Some also don't like anything to be put in place until it reaches the first floor level. With block construction, it's going to rise as you start to build out the house. And then the roofers are going to come in place, and they're going to apply the actual render on the roof. And it also this will also require the bricklayers So the bricklayers will be building at least the outer skin, usually with a timber frame construction, and obviously within the actual block construction, they're going to obviously be applying that. And then on the external skin, you're going to have some sort of render, unless you've actually built it with brick. So there'll be some sort of render that could be a thing like K-rend, which is a smooth render. It could be a wet dash, it could be a dry dash render, it could be some sort of stonework, or it could be some sort of cladding. Next, we look at the internals, and what we're going to have is various trades involved here. We're going to have joiners or carpenters, plumbers, and electricians. Essentially what these guys are doing is they're creating the internal structure, and everything that the plumbers and electricians do is going to be hidden behind that structure. And so what the joiners are going to do is they're going to be working on the insulation. Again, it depends on the method of construction. When the house is being built, the insulation, if it's block, will have been installed as the structure starts to rise out of the ground. With timber frame, it will be going into the panels of the timber frame. Sometimes you can have that also delivered in that way. Obviously that's a bit more expensive, but then it saves on time. So these are different considerations. But generally you're going to have that installed. That's going to be the joiners and plumbers. The joiners, should I say. They will then create service cavities within that, and that then allows for the trunking for the electrics, all the wiring that needs to go in place for all the various things, whether that be lighting, appliances, sockets, smoke detectors, fire alarms, heat detectors, all the different things that need to go in. So this is basically putting all the infrastructure in there, and also the plumbers are going, and heating engineers are going to do the same. So depending on what heating system that you've selected, they're going to be putting the pipe work in for that heating system, and they're also going to be putting in the pipe work for your hot and cold water supplies. Obviously this has not been attached to the house yet, but this is basically the infrastructure, which again, as I said before, is going to be hidden behind the final coating. So if that tends to be plasterboard, the plasterboard would then be applied after that by the joiners. If it's block work, then it may be, and you're going to have a plaster finish on the block work, then what's going to happen is that is going to have to be chiseled out of the block work itself, and that then would obviously then be plastered over so as it's hidden at that stage. So they're going to put conduit in there so that they can actually feed the wiring through, or obviously in the case of the plumbers, they're going to be putting in the pipe work, and so that's going to have to be channeled out. And then what will then happen is that once that's finished, the plastering will then take place. If it's plastering, then that's obviously going to go on to the block work itself, and there'll be various stages of that. If it's plasterboard, then they're going to tape and fill the different cracks within the plasterboard to give a smooth surface, and then finally the decorators will give a mist coat, and that will basically give the base coat for the finishing coats that will take place during the second fix phase. So if you're enjoying this series, please remember to subscribe. Remember, only 15% generally have. I would like to see that number come up, and it would really help this channel if you were able to do that. If you'd like a copy of my book, You a Property Developer, there'll be a link in the description below. There'll be a link just showing up there just now where you can actually take you to the page where you can get this copy of this book. All I ask is that you pay for the postage and packaging, and I will then send you a hard copy of the book. If you want to see the video prior to this in this series, then watch this video here, and if you want to watch the one next in this series, then watch this video here. Until the next time, take care, and I look forward to speaking to you then. Bye bye.